Do you want to make your own beautiful, colorful, crystal clear glass cabochons at home? Now you can. Everything you need is right here. Most of the stuff you should already have in your house, and if you don't, the rest of it you could probably get at the dollar store. So it's very low cost, and just take a screenshot of this if you can, or just pause the video and write everything down, and we shall begin.
Alright, so we're going to start with getting the ink out of the Sharpie. So there's a lot of different ways to do this, and probably a lot more safe ways. So you can use pliers and grab it. This is the hardest part of the whole process. Alright, pliers aren't working for you. What I was doing is grabbing with scissors and just kind of like, well, these scissors are kind of janky. Alright, let's go back to pliers. And just pulling it off. Alright, let's try a more substantial set. So your best luck is with your most substantial pair of scissors that don't like bend so much if you try to bend them on this axis. So like these are kind of real wonky and they bend real easy. So anyway, so you grab real tight and then you just pry up. There we go. And this is what you want. So then, this is why we're already wearing our gloves. I guess we should start and put some alcohol in a jar. So this is just leftover from my hair dye, washed clean. It's plastic and it has a lid. So I'm going to put just a bit of alcohol in there to start with. If it turns out that I might need a little bit more to get them fully submerged, I'll add some more. Somewhere around 1/8 of a cup is good. So then, I'm going to cut right down here so that you expose the core of the cotton ink and the alcohol can really get in there. And then, using a pair of crap scissors, although you can clean it, cut them into a little bit smaller than like cigarette butt size. And that all really depends on what size container you use. If you use a taller container or are adding more ink to it, you can cut them into larger pieces. But since I'm using a small container, I'm going to cut them into small pieces. And you can see how much ink gets on your scissors. So, but with a cotton ball and some alcohol, it wipes right off. Right, that went fine. And then I cover my workstation this time just with some notebook paper so that it doesn't go everywhere, because as you can see on my gloves, it gets everywhere. All right. Now I'll put the lid back on because it's alcohol and it smells. And then you can already see how yellow it is. You want to look up against the white paper. It's very yellow. And then we just let them sit for a while. More color will start to leach out of them. I've seen, and from here you can remove, after you let it steep for a while, you can remove the cotton core and transfer this to a bottle with a dropper top, because that's how alcohol ink is normally applied. But I don't have any of them, so I just keep them in these jars and use Q-tips to apply. Alright, so now that that's done, here's my trash pile over here. And here's a bunch more Sharpies that we can make if we want to. But here are the ones that I have already made. So this is orange, and you can see how well saturated the color is in that orange. And then here are two different markers. This one is red, and this one is pink. But as you can see, they turned out very similar colors. So this right here is from a red Sharpie, but you can see how fluorescent pink it is. I don't know if everyone's red Sharpie will turn out that way, but that's how my red Sharpie did. And this is from a legitimately pink Sharpie that turned out pink as it should. All right, you can see how messy your gloves get. For this part now, I don't need gloves. Okay, so now we are going to prepare our tinfoil. So we're going to take a real small piece of tinfoil. You don't need a lot at all. And the bigger you make it, the harder it is to work with. All right, so now we're going to crumple it up. Not too tight, because you're going to want to uncrumple it. So now uncrumple it. So you see you got some nice crinkles in there. Now we're going to crumple it again in the same way. And again, not too much because you want to be able to uncrumple it. And if you end up tearing your corners and stuff and tearing it a little bit when you get it uncrumpled, it's no big deal. I think maybe, see, I just tear it, it's fine. I think maybe heavy duty tinfoil would work better for this, but regular tinfoil is what I had. All right, so now that it's nice and crinkle, we take something round and flat. There's a tool that you can use for this. I forget what it's called. It's a funny name, but we're just going to use this can of sealant. So you just want to make it not totally flat. You don't want to rub out everything that you just did, but you want it to be more flat than when you worked with it first. You do both sides a little bit. Now you can see it still has all those crinkle ridges in there, but it'll be much easier to paint on. All right, so now let's get our gloves back on. And we're gonna with the alcohol ink, which is homemade. So this is not exactly how I'd imagine store-bought alcohol ink to work, but we do with what we can.
Pausing it.
Okay, so now we are going to alcohol ink paint our tinfoil. So normally, again, alcohol ink comes in little dropper bottles, but ours is homemade and we don't have dropper bottles, so we are going to use some Q-tips to apply the paint. So I've cut our tinfoil up into different smaller strips because alcohol ink, it acts a lot like watercolor, except it's on a non-porous surface, so it really just moves a whole lot. If I wanted to keep one certain area red and blue and another area orange and yellow, that would be really hard to do because they blend so easily. So to mitigate that, I just make them on different pieces of paper. So we'll start over here with some yellow and we're just dropping it on. And I like to start with the lighter colors because the dark ones seem to take over, and I have a heavy hand at first. So if I'm going to paint it one color, I want it to be the light color. All right. And then now, let's get a different Q-tip for our orange. And here I'm going to add it very, very, very gently. Not nearly as much as the yellow because it's pretty overpowering. And then you can take it and you can blow on it or roll it around like this. Just really let it do what it wants to do, and it starts to get some really nice different types of blends. Some areas where the orange stays and maybe gets a little lighter, blends nice into the yellow. I'm going to add a little bit more in different places. You come back in with the yellow. And then again, just swish it around. You blow on it some. And then that's good. And then you can do it with your other colors too. So again, this is the red Sharpie, and you can see it turns out quite pink. So applying a bunch of this, because the blue is pretty overpowering. And I like purple, so when I add the blue, it'll just lovingly make some purple. And then we get another Q-tip for our blue. Let this move around. You can see how it does start to turn purple in some areas, but it's just really kind of dominant. If we want to get a little bit more purple, we can come in and add some more pink. But at this point, it's pretty much the same as watercolor. So if you have any familiarity with watercolor, it's like that. But since it's on a non-porous surface, it moves very fast. All right, I like the way that one turned out. And then lastly, let's do some yellow and some blue because the greens on there end up turning out very nice. All right, we're going to come in with blue. tip and let it move around. That's where you really get some of the most interesting stuff. If you wanted to leave some areas silver and not paint over it, that's also a nice addition. Just doesn't happen to be where my personal aesthetic is. All right, there we go. So they look kind of a mess, but you have to remember that when we are actually using them, we are only using an area that is about this big. So on micro, they're going to look amazing. All right, so these will take a little while to dry. Although it's alcohol ink, it still does take some time to dry, especially it seems on tin foil. You can use a blow dryer on high heat, but on low power to make them dry faster. That does work very well, as long as you make sure to hold on to not used or silver part of the paper to keep it from fluttering away, because it is very light and it will run away. And whatever it touches, it will tint with whatever color it is. But we have some finished pieces over here that we've already used to make some of our cabochons. And so you can see some pinks and blues and some yellows and orange, and then this. So what we do now is we take a cabochon, and because these are pretty cheap, you want to make sure that there's no imperfections on the bottom that are really bold that might ruin the effect once it's laid on the tin foil. So now we take whatever part of the tin foil kind of looks cool, so you lay the glass bead on it, and you will see it does give a magnifying effect, so it looks different. So you don't want to look at it like this with your naked eye and say, oh, this looks like a good spot. No, you really want to lay down the piece and find what's a good spot. I happen to like the spots where the two lines cross over. So the two different colors cross over. So here I have a nice section of yellow and then this tealish green. So I put the cabochon right in the center of that. Now, if you have perfectly circular glass beads, you can use a hole punch to do the next step. That's a hole punch of the same size. I do not have perfectly circular glass beads, so I have to trace them out by myself. So you can use a Sharpie if you want to, and then carefully cut around, making sure not to include any of the line of the Sharpie. I'm not a good cutter, so instead I'm going to use a toothpick and really just impress the image of the cabochon on there, and then use some scissors to cut it out. All right, so I'm going to figure out how I like it best laid on there. So now, while my beads are not perfectly circular, they're close enough to circular that I don't really have to make sure that I apply the tin foil in the same way that I'm looking at it now. Like if it was a very oddly shaped bead or something like that, I might have to make sure that I'm laying it the right way, but here it works out just fine. Alright, so I have these very, very sharp craft scissors that I like to use for these types of things, so I'm going to cut this piece of tin foil right here just to make it easier to manhandle. And then, I don't know if you can see it on film, but there is an impression of a circle right here, and that'll be the line that I'm going to follow. So I'm just going to use these wonderful, sharp and pointy craft scissors. And cut around this circle very neatly. And there we go. Because it's tin foil, it cuts very, very easily. Also, because it's tin foil, it tears very, very easily. So you want to make sure when you're doing your impression, you're not pressing super, super hard, because that'll just make your tin foil tear. A very light touch is all that you need really to impress the image of the circle on there so that you can get it on your cabochon. So the next thing is to glue this piece of tin foil to the back of your glass bead. We have been experimenting with many different types of glues here today. What I believe may work best is like a Mod Podge crystal clear, but we don't have any of that right now. So we are going to work with just some regular washable white glue. So all we have is this large container, which is fine though, because we have lots and lots of Q-tips. So you don't need much glue at all. I'm gonna dip that in there. Put a nice old drop. Really, that drop right there, that's all that you need. And we're going to put our cabochon right back on there and press. And lift it up and very gently go around and curl your edges. You want to make sure not to get any of your glue on your glass bead as much as possible, because on the sides of your glass bead around here, because it does make the edge cloudy, although you can always go back with maybe a warm washcloth, or I was using some alcohol wipes last night. Right? Now you can see it's glued on there nice and tight, so I'm just going to press it down one more time just to make sure to squeeze all the glue out the sides and not have any wet glue in there. And there you go. You can see the Elmer's glue hasn't distorted the color at all. It hasn't made the color run or anything like that. And that's it, totally done. Now, if you wanted to make this a jewelry piece, we recommend that you would seal it. Mostly the tinfoil is very, very, very fragile, so you want to be able to protect that. Again, with some Mod Podge crystal coat would be nice, or we've actually thought about maybe even trying this, so we'll see what works out. If you're planning to use them just for magnets or something like that, I don't think you really need to coat them. You can just glue a magnet to the back. Since they're not so heavily used as magnets, they would be fine. But just to give you an example of different glue types, here's what happened when we used super glue. Here's the color the tinfoil was, and I'm not kidding. We weren't using this purple and blue. We used this green and yellow. The super glue had some type of chemical reaction and turned it red and blue. Really nice. The color still stayed in there, but it's not the color that it was anymore. And then we also tried E6000. E6000 did a real good job being crystal clear, but it made the color more muted. It made the color run a little bit. So you can see this previously had some type of this saturation, you know, with this more bright pink and purple, and then now it's really, really washed out. And it's probably something to do with the chemicals in the E6000 making the alcohol run. Not entirely experts in that. All right.
All of these, not including drying time, were made basically within half an hour. So this is really fun, it's really easy, and you can then wire wrap them. I think a lot of them would look really good with silver. If you're not experienced in wire wrapping cabochons or really slippery pieces that don't have holes, you could literally just take a little loop of wire and super glue it on the back, and then you'll have a loop to attach it to make it a pendant, to attach it to a necklace. Or if you get this size, it's a little bit heavy, but if you get slightly smaller ones, you could glue little posts on the back and they could easily be post stud earrings. So anyway, tons of fun. Let's see what you guys come up with.